This is a very hallowed place. When you think of the people who have been here, we know that there was a courthouse somewhere up here. We know this because in 1723, Peter Marks applied for a tavern license. And you got that at the courthouse, which was on the property of Robert Jennings. The area around us was owned as early as 1685 by a David Craddock. What you see is probably the way it looks since the 1950s. It was renovated 3 times in the 50s. They put some air conditioning in, moved the roof around a little bit better lighting. Before, we had a room in the back. There was a small room, and they've put a little fireplace back there. Well, they pushed that up, and we also had 2 fireplaces over here. But that's basically the changes that have been made. The wainscoting and so on. If you go to other courthouses, this is what you see in the other courthouses, a basic color. Now, when you came in, if you saw the keystone, it said 1735. No, it was probably built anywhere from 1737 to 1739. We don't have an exact date. The clerk's building was built about 1840. Before the hand, we had no clerk's building. The clerk basically took his work home with him, and his house was, where he operated out of. The first clerk, if you're familiar with names in Hanover County, was Philip Winston. The jail was built in 1835, and we want to get you over there because we've done a lot of work in there. That replaced a wooden jail. At one time, we had 2 jails there. The wooden one burnt down. Now remember, court cases were held here only a certain number of times a year. And this was a big thing. You can imagine a court case being held here. They would have people from all over coming in. If you've seen some of the land around here, you know that you may not have seen your neighbor in quite a while. So this is a chance to catch up, gossip on the latest news, sell your wares, buy a little liquid refreshments, shall we say, that you may have made. We had fights here, quarrels. This is where troops were mustered. The gentleman that you see with the wig is Samuel Davis. He was a minister. Right here, he delivered a speech in 1755, I believe it is, in which he was so informative and so great. He was a great speaker, and by the way, Patrick Henry patterned his speeches after Samuel Davis, that immediately 500 men volunteered. So this is where you could come to muster. We know George Washington was here several times, stayed at the tavern, came over here. The Count de Rochambeau, who was the French equivalent of George Washington, and his aide was a Francis John Castello. They were here several times, I might add. We know that Cornwallis was here. We know Cornwallis was here because he stayed at the tavern and stiffed them for the bill when he left. So I guess they're still looking for the money. When you look at this area and think, this is where Patrick Henry walked, or this is where George Washington came. So it's a very, very important area. This is exact room where Jeb Stuart got his commission. In this room and reorganized the cavalry. And also Mosby was here to confer with his troops, get them organized. So it's a very, very important site. By the way, one other thing, the pews were not here. When you had a trial, judges didn't want to get them comfortable, You wanted to get them in and out as fast as possible. Also, one other thing I have to bring out, there was a question about Patrick Henry's uncle. His uncle wasn't here, but his cousin was. His cousin was one of the jurors, believe it or not. In the case, 2 of the jurors were religious dissenters, and one was his cousin. So you can imagine Mr. Lowry over here was pretty upset about, hey, this is a rabble-rousing group of people you've got here. And all Patrick Henry said are good, honest men. And also, of course, the judge in the case, anybody know who the judge was? His father, John Henry. Now, there was no reaction to that because John Henry was an extremely honorable man. Two things I want to point out to the jail. On the right side, near where the air conditioner is, there's a stone, okay? As you go out into the road behind the jail, between the jail and the library, look up at the window and you'll see a carved piece out. That's where that piece came from. In the 1930s, 3 inmates decided they didn't like the food here or something, and with spoons they carved, and no jailer heard them. They carved out the stone, pushed it out, and ran home. One of the guys came back that night. He said he didn't have anything else to do, so he decided to come home. And another guy said his wife made him come back. So I don't know how the third guy got back. But make sure you look at that. We have exhibits in there for you to see. We have some excellent artifacts, and I might add, members of the Historical Society did a great job in working on that. So, do you have any questions of Courthouse?